dad's going to say something first, and I'll give a little speech as well. Okay. I just want to say thank you. Thank you. In Greek, it's Efcharisto. There you go. Hey, well, I got it. But you haven't heard anything yet. Wait a minute. And I really do appreciate it. How'd you like the meal? There you go. And you know why we got them. They're the best. They're the best anywhere. But as I say, thank you all. I know it's a trip for many of you, but I really appreciate it. And Kevin has got more than I say. But as I say, I just wanted to say, which is thank you. But I also wanted to. Where's my glass? Where's your glass? Where's my glass? And I have the other. And I have the other word I want to say. And that is. No, I have three. And that is. Siniyamas. Let me. I can probably do a few more, but I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Dad. Thank you. Well, Joey and Olga, is this guy something or is he something? This crew is good. Movie? Heat. Okay. I could thank so many people, okay? But I want to thank the parents on both sides. Paniota's parents. You came over when you were 14 years old, didn't know much in terms of English, learned it on the subway, turned yourself into having a great big diner right in the shadows of the old World Trade Centers. Then you had a second diner and a third diner, and you raised these beautiful women, Alicia and Paniota. And I just feel so fortunate that you've been such wonderful parents and so wonderful to me. So thank you. I'd also like to thank my parents. If you were lucky enough to meet my mom, she was a gentle spirit and had the most serene of souls. She really was a decent person. And I don't care what anybody says, a boy's first love is always his mother. But when I met Paniota, and I got a chance to meet her, to spend time with her, she was just the most gentle, welcoming, loving person. She reminded me of my mom. And I felt so fortunate. In this very house, I learned a lot about love and marriage and in sickness and health. The summer of 2007. My dad and mom. So I feel very lucky this house is where I'm having my wedding. Dad, I've told you this many times, but for as long as I can remember, you've been the smartest person in the room. If you want to know about economics, my dad's an expert. If you want to know art and literature, my dad's an expert. If you want to know Spanish Civil War history, my father is an expert. If you want to know film, my dad knows film. And some of my fondest memories were as a young boy seeing movies with my dad and mom. My mom loved Woody Allen movies, all the movies from the 70s that he made. And then my dad loved Big Jack and Marlon Brando. It was Brando for breakfast and Nicholson by night. It really was that kind of childhood of loving film. I'd just like to share one quick story about my father and a little bit out of a movie. Some of you know, 3 years ago, my father had what was deemed at the time a minor surgical procedure. Summer of 2017. Well, that surgery went wrong, and it went seriously wrong. They punctured his heart. I don't use this word often because I'm an English teacher, but literally, my father's heart was bleeding, and it was bleeding out. And this was in North Carolina. And ironically enough, I was actually going up to Shane and Andrea's wedding back in 2017. And for whatever reason, I just had a bad feeling about that day. And so somehow when the news came that my father's surgery had been botched, I was right in Norfolk, and they said, we're flying him from North Carolina up to the Heart Center up in Norfolk. I sped over to Norfolk and got to the hospital and saw him truly getting helicoptered in. You know, they brought him in, and the doctor came out and said, we've got to open your father up, and we've got to patch his heart. And he's an 80-year-old man, and I just want you to be prepared. And you know my father, besides being the smartest man, he's also a really dedicated exerciser. Runs every day, lifts weights. I mean, really, to this day, he's lifting weights down in that basement. And 30 minutes later, the doctor came out and said he was going to be fine. And I couldn't believe it. I told siblings, we were in shock. 80-year-old men don't survive punctured hearts. They just don't. You don't usually have a punctured heart. And so I slept over at the hospital that night, and the next morning the nurse came and woke me and said, you know, we're going to try to wake your father up. And I said, okay, well, how long does it take? And she said, minutes, could take hours, could take days. He may never wake up. And then she said something to me that really struck me. She said, just be prepared. Your father might not be the same person when he comes out of this. He was under so much trauma and distress in the hospital in North Carolina that they had to fly him up. And I just wondered, my God, the smartest man in the world, what's going to happen to him? And so the nurse comes in, and I come in, and they wean him off the drugs, basically a medically induced coma. And they start weaning him off, and I'm grabbing his hand, and my dad begins to come to. And he's flickering the eyes, and, you know, he's beginning to open his eyes, and I'm grabbing his hand, saying, Dad, you know, wake up, wake up. And he wakes up, and the nurse says, what is your full name? And he says, Frank Dale Draper. Okay. He says, what year is it? And he says, 2017. And then she says, who's the President of the United States? And he just starts shaking his head. Just doing this. And I'll tell you, without missing a beat, the nurse said, your father's going to be just fine. And it was just one of those moments when he looked over at me, and we've shared a lot of movie times, but The Godfather's been our movie. Nothing like watching The Godfather with my father, with a little bit of wine, a little bit of vino, as he likes to say, and reciting lines. And I try to beat him, and he beats me. But there's a moment in the movie where Marlon Brando he's in the hospital bed, and his son, Michael Corleone, says, I'm with you now, Pop, I'm with you. And I took my father's hand, and I said, I'm with you now. I'm with you. And he kind of smiled, and he knew the line. And it was a movie-like moment for me, and one that I'll never forget. And I speak for all the children, all the grandchildren. Life just wouldn't be the same without you. Thank you for your generosity, your ability to laugh at the craziest of things. My father has an irreverent humor, but also always being the smartest person in the room. I admire you to death. Keep cranking it out. Keep smiling. I love you, and I thank you so much. Kev? Best man? All right. All right.
Good evening, everybody. Hey, how's it going? Right. My name is Kevin Reed. I am Joe's best man and best friend, and this is a rare moment in Joe and I's relationship where I get to do all the talking without being interrupted by Joe. So I'm going to take advantage of it. First of all, congratulations to the bride and groom. Also, congratulations to the parents for raising such wonderful individuals. I think as a team they will absolutely improve the world with their love and their talent. Thank you also for a wonderful rehearsal dinner, Mr. Draper, and wedding ceremony, Mr. and Mrs. Calamara. Thank you guys so much. So I've known Joe since about 4th grade. I'm really, truly grateful. I think I'm really, truly grateful to have grown up in Stratford-on-the-Potomac because it gave me the opportunity to grow up with all the fine gentlemen that you see around here. And I forged these lifelong relationships with all these guys that are here today. And when I tell people about my Mount Vernon crew, I realize really how rare it is to still have childhood friends into adulthood. It's really rare, and it's a great blessing, and I hope I have these relationships forever. I'm also truly grateful for my relationship with Joe. Joe and I really started becoming friends in high school and in college. And since then, if you can believe it, rarely a week or two goes by that Joe and I don't share a phone conversation. In 1999, Joe and I got working visas and moved to Dublin, Ireland. And this was an unforgettable time. It was just new independent life, the freedom of young adulthood. It was a pre-9/11 world, and we were each other's drives for adventure and comfort when we were otherwise alone out in the big world. These were some of the best years of my life, and a time when I would actually unknowingly be meeting my future wife. In fact, Joe thought it was so cool living in Ireland that he actually just only recently stopped telling people that he just moved back from Ireland. So when the real world started taking hold after Ireland, I decided to go out west aimlessly with no plan, and I landed in Arizona, where I spent over a decade of my life. Joe, as well, tried to go to different places and different parts of the world to create a new life, only to come back to his roots and eventually find his wife right back where it all started. Senora, you look absolutely stunning today. Ever since you've come into Joe's life, I have just seen a happier, calmer, more content person. When Joe told me that he made the decision to propose and that you said yes, I could literally feel the weight of Joe's restless face lifted. I know this restlessness. Joe has always been somewhat of a restless spirit. But with you, Senora, his energy has finally found peace and the comfort of stillness. So thank you. After that happened, Joe really, honestly, he could not stop telling me about how happy and really contented that he was that he had found your loving life. It was truly like hearing about a miracle. Even his voice changed. I could hear it in his voice. And this is what happens when love happens. People change. When God's grace happens in the form of this love, people change, and I could hear it in his voice. It was beautiful, and it made me really happy. Still does. Joe and I both believe that good, fulfilling, and lasting relationships take the true desire on the part of both people to put their energy, spirit, faith, trust, and sometimes a little dependence into them. I love Joe. I love Joe because he's walked with me through happiness and pain. He's walked with me through the passing of my mother, only to give me the honor of doing the same for him over a decade later. Joe's devotion and care to his mother during her final days was a traumatic necessity of his heart that I was spared in my life. But I was happy I could at least absorb some of his pain and eventual grief from having lived there in the past myself, and it brought us very, very close. Joe's action, care, and compassion during that time was a testament to his devotion to people that he loved. I love Joe because he's never talked me out of any crazy decisions, but rather gave me meaningful insight, support, and then even helped me clean up when it was a complete failure. there was never any judgment from Joe. In fact, I've never had to lose Joe as a friend because despite 35 years and sometimes thousands of miles between us, Joe's never gone anywhere. I love Joe because he's a little bit arrogant. He's a little bit faulted, and sometimes, you know, Joe doesn't really need anything. You know, you might have heard, yeah, I don't need I don't need some, you know, person to tell, you know, I don't need all the fancy, you know, I don't, you know, I just don't need anything. Honestly, it can be a very entertaining aspect of his personality. Joe's got the worst road rage that I have ever seen in my life. Joe used to go to parties with us, and towards the end of the night, he would just disappear. He wouldn't leave with anybody. He'd just disappear, leave us for the last hour of the party, wondering where he was. And it was the king of Irish goodbyes, so much so that we called this move a Joey D. Oh, he pulled a Joey D. Yep, pulled a Joey D. I love Joe because he's been a teacher for 20 years. He volunteers. He's got a connection with people. Joe has the gift of gab, a magnetic energy, and he knows what the right thing to do is most of the time. I am so blessed to have had Joe in my life for, well, most all of it. He's been my therapist, my comic relief, my prank caller, my rock-out spasmo, but most of all, my best friend and brother. Senora, God bless you for taking on this endeavor. But also welcome into all of our lives. We love you too. I hope that this testament to all the reasons that Joe is my best friend are proof that for all the same reasons, Joe is going to make an amazing husband. So let's raise our glasses to the new bride and groom, Joe and Camille.
Oh, that's great. Right over there.
Yes, I'm sorry. We were hiding back there.
Alright. Hello, everybody. In case not everybody knows who I am, Panagiota's older sister, Denitra. I would like to thank everyone who has come to celebrate the marriage of my sister Panagiota and Joseph. Also, those special loved ones held close to their hearts and mine, Joseph's mom and Panagiota's yaya, which is our grandmother, who are both looking at you from above or in spirit. Okay. Joseph, thank you for always being there for my sister. You're putting a smile on her face with your amazing heart. Panagiota, I've watched you grow from a shy, very determined young little girl to be a successful, kind, but very determined woman. I'm proud of you. I'm very, very proud of you. You guys will be wonderful together. You will have so many memories to create for the rest of your lives. So on this day, your wedding day, I want to wish my baby sister and her Prince Charming the very best. Happily ever after, a girl can ever dream of. I love you guys. Congratulations. Welcome to the family, Joe. Everyone read your glasses to the Irish and the Greek as well, the Drapers. You're welcome.
Well, on that note, we thought we'd do a little Greek dancing. You don't